Welcome. We're going to look at the effective and interesting things about family faith formation. Paul works at the ministry as ministry support at the pastoral center. There's a bio in your booklet. But here's what you need to know. Here's what Paul said his non-negotiable is. Events must put parents in an active role, not just a passive listening role. Parents in an active role, not just a passive listening role. So as you listen to Paul, check in and see if he's saying that. Write down some notes and some questions. Here you go, Paul.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am the director of the online pastoral center. So we're an independent nonprofit. We're not associated with any diocese, even though many of you have diocesan centers that might be called that. So we are a ministry that was established by Bill Hipsch 15 years ago or so. That's where our history comes from. He's our board president. And our entire focus is on serving pastoral ministers like you. Okay? And our family catechesis ministry or brand or whatever you want to call it is Growing Up Catholic. So you may have heard that name. And we've been doing this since the beginning. This was kind of where we came from, starting with family catechesis. And we have been listening to parents for 15 years. Okay? And then as we've worked on experimenting, figuring out how to work with those parents, we've been listening to the parish leaders who have been working with those parents. So we've been doing a lot of listening, experimentation, trying different things, and listening some more. And so that's what brought us to this place. And this is the bottom line of where we've gotten to, right? What we understand is a non-negotiable, right? We need intergenerational, lifelong faith formation, and parents need to be in that process if we want to have any hope of the faith being passed on from generation to generation. And so in this next 3 hours that I have with you, I'm going to cover two main topics. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about our approach to faith formation, where we've gotten to from all of that listening. And then I'm going to talk about our Lilly Grant program, because we are in the same Lilly Grant program as NCCL, the family focused program. So I'm going to tell you about what we're doing in the program and how we got there. Okay? So when we heard about this Lilly Grant, the opportunity, we asked ourselves the question, well, if money were no object, what would be the best way to advance parent-centered, intergenerational family catechesis? Like, how can we make the best impact with that? And so what we decided to focus on was on unequipped parishes. We wanted to look at any parish, not just the parishes the visionary parishes that would seek us out, that already figured out family catechesis, because they're great, we work with them already, but we wanted to figure out how can we best help those parishes that have not figured out family catechesis yet. They might be thinking about it, they might know that it's something they want to do, but they don't know how to do it, or there's barriers in the place of it. And so we wanted to focus on how do we remove those barriers for those parishes. We wanted to focus on the easiest way for them to get started. So we didn't want to come and say, here's all these things that you can do for family catechesis, or lots of options. We said, how can we focus with sort of the simplest message, the simplest way to get started? And we wanted to focus not just on the process and the resources, but especially on forming leaders, because that's maybe the most important part, is that we're having leaders for family catechesis. We need to shift our mindset as leaders from focusing just on the kids to focusing on the parents. How do we form, support, equip those parents? So we wanted a big part of what we were doing with this grant, with the proposal that we offered, to focus on that formation piece. Okay? So I'm going to back up a little bit, or to talk about just our approach to family catechesis, how we understand it, how we talk about that, because that's all of what we kind of put into the grant and into the tools that are part of that grant. There's not one right way to do family catechesis. I want to be clear about that. But we have a particular approach and a methodology that we found works really well, that can be at least a piece of a family catechesis approach, even if you're doing multiple things. We think the best way is to be doing multiple things within the parish, at least eventually. But this is what we think is the best place to start. And the first insight of how we talk about it is that we need to shift parents into the role of catechists I think most of you probably know and can recite the language around this, right? That parents are the primary catechists of their own kids. Okay, we say that. Can we shift our ministry to doing this? Can we actually put parents into that catechist role? And it doesn't mean that the catechists are out of a job. We use the language of coaching, and we think that those catechists, the parish leaders, need to be in the role of coaching those parents. Okay, so we need to change some things in terms of our relationship with those parents. We need to raise our expectation of parents and what they can do. We need to believe in them and put them at the center of the faith formation process, not just around the edges. And we need to be walking with those parents and families on their faith journeys, listening to what's most meaningful to them. It's not just a top-down process. It's really a bottom-up process where we're listening and figuring out how to give them what they need. So we need to change what we ask parents to do as well. So instead of just talking at parents and telling them to do something later, like at home, or just send something home with them, that just does not work very well. They've kind of forgotten about it by the time that they get home. And so what we believe is that we need to have experiences where parents learn by doing, that they're going to come in and they're going to practice doing something with their child. They're going to practice sharing faith in the moment while we're there to support them. And we think that this needs to be a transformative conversion experience. That's really what the goal is, that by parents experiencing this and trying it and seeing that, oh my goodness, I can teach my child something. I learned something from my child. What's going on in that experience is going to change them and how they identify so that they can move into that kind of catechist role, a role where they believe that they can share their faith. We also need to, this is part of the listening, but paying attention to where these families are at. And we need to meet them where they're at and not assume that they're in a place where they've received the same kind of training that catechists may have received. That's not the case. Many of them don't come to Mass regularly. Many of them may be skeptical about the faith on different levels. So we need to be fine with that and invite them into the process and design a process that's going to work for them and evangelize them from where they're at. Help them to meet Jesus from where they're at. And the goal is for us to form and evangelize both the parents and kids, but parents first. Because if we move the parents and where they're at, that is going to make its way down to the children. So that's the goal of these events, is really to get at the parents. And the kids are going to get something too. We don't forget about the kids, but the parents are the primary focus. And of course, we want to make it a fun and engaging event that they want to be there for. Okay. We also, as we've been thinking about the grant program and the resources that we've developed as we've been listening through the years, is that we've been listening to the research. There's been an awful lot of research. Many of you have probably heard a lot about all these different studies that have looked at faith transmission and disaffiliation and families and all of that. So what we've done is we pulled all of that in and said, okay, well, how do we put these learnings into place so that we can counteract the disaffiliation or offer these things that are most associated with the families where faith is being passed down effectively? So we're trying to help parents to talk faith with their kids. We're trying to help them to bring faith practices home, and specific ones that showed up in a number of these studies. And we want to help the parents to show their kids that faith is important to them. These are the kinds of things that we're seeing in the studies as kind of the bullet points of what makes a difference. And so we said, if we're going to set up a process where we invite parents into it, why don't we do exactly those things that we know work? So we think that we need a different kind of event in parishes, a different kind of a religious education event in which the parents attend with their kids. And these are photos from some of our pilot parishes already that are experiencing this in our cohort program. So the parents are going to attend with their kids. They're going to be the teachers of their own children in these events. The catechists are going to coach those parents, give them what they need, give them the support they need to do a great job. They're going to provide structure and orchestrate the event and step in when the parents need help. And the parents' faith is going to grow within this event, within this experience. And what we've learned is that parents can do this, and they want to do this when we give them the opportunity. It's just a rare opportunity for them in most of our parishes. Problem is they've never been given this opportunity. In the center of the process is the parent-child relationship and the parent-child conversations. So, we're talking a lot about listening and synodality here. That's the core of this process, because we're teaching the parents to listen to their kids and teaching them to share faith between them. They're learning from each other, and we as leaders should also be listening to what's coming out of those conversations so that we grow as well. This is a synodal approach, okay? This is what it looks like. And this is what it looks like in an actual center. You're having families that are sitting together in these little groups here at these tables. We gather them in a big room, parents sitting next to the child. And we build the process around a simple resource. It's not a textbook that's going to intimidate parents, but kind of a lighter handout that's going to guide them through those conversations, guide them through some fun activities, coach the parents in what they need to know to do this with their child without any preparation beforehand, because that's not realistic. We're going to number some simple steps there for the parents to follow to make it as easy as possible, since they're looking at it for the first time. We're going to give them any answers to questions or any guidelines that they need to move through this to make it a success for them. And we're going to focus on some of the family habits that we want to be instilled in these families. So we're going to kind of build this into the resource and the process, because that's really the goal, is for the faith to end up in the home. The goal isn't for it to stay in the parish. It's for this to be an ongoing process in the home. So we want families praying together, reading the Bible together, connecting over family meals, having faith conversations at home. So we're going to help them practice pieces of this, learn how to do it, and then we send them home once they kind of believe, yeah, we can do this. Okay, so let's shift and talk about, so you got to kind of get a picture of the methodology of how we're coming at this. And so then we entered into this grant program and made a proposal and said, okay, well, how can we best help? How can we have the best impact or the most impact in bringing this to parishes? Okay, so there's two parts. I'm just going to share some details about how this is structured and how it works. There's two parts to the grant. Part of it is a general initiative to improve our resources and our outreaching, training, and support to any parishes anywhere in the U.S. or the English-speaking world. We actually do a fair amount in Canada and the U.K. as well. Okay, but the more interesting piece, maybe for you and to talk about here today, is our cohort programs. And what these are about, kind of analogous to what NCCL is doing in some ways, but different as well, is that we're focusing on 15 different dioceses, 5 at a time. And for each of those dioceses, we're trying to identify 10 to 15 parishes that are not doing family catechesis or not doing a significant, like across-the-board family catechesis program, who we can help transition into this. So we're going to try to remove the barriers. There's all those, hey, we want to do family catechesis, but, right? We hear this all the time. Well, we should be doing family catechesis, but. So we're trying to remove those barriers by making it free for this number of parishes. We come in and do trainings, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a moment. Okay, so that would be 150 to 200 new parishes across the country that are not doing family catechesis now, that would be doing family catechesis through the program. And that's being seeded in these different dioceses as examples that the other parishes can learn from. And we're focusing on just sacramental prep, because this is what every parish needs to do, right? So it's extended sacramental prep, a 2-year program with immediate preparation for reconciliation, Eucharist, but also a charismatic piece where we help the parents to tell the stories of Jesus to their kids, which they may not have done before or may not be confident enough to do that. So we're going to help them do that. And the other pieces of the grant is that we fly out, Claudio, our team member, who flies out and gives these in-person presentations in English and Spanish. He pitches to the DREs, the PCLs, the leaders there, and says basically what I just told you, that kind of a pitch, and then said, these resources are free for you try in a 2-year process, and we're going to come back and train you. So the resources are, these family catechesis, the ones that I just talked about. We provide those for free. Do all the printing, ship them out, no cost to the parish. And then Claudio comes back. So in the fall, he gives the initial presentation. In the spring, after the sign-up period, he comes back and gives a full day training to any of the leaders in the diocese, whether they're in the grant program or not. Anybody can come, and he trains them on how to do this process. Then we can continue to support those leaders remotely by phone, and we have an online community where they can ask questions, and we can, keep coaching them in little drips along the way, a little piece here and there. Here's a little video on how to do this well. And then there's an evaluation process that is built into this. Lily loves evaluation, so they've really encouraged us to do this. And so what we're doing is we're surveying the families at the beginning of the process, and we're asking them a bunch of questions about the reality of faith in their homes. So we're asking them things like how often they go to Mass, but also how often do you pray together? How often do you eat together as a family? We ask a bunch of those questions that are on a number of the surveys. I stole most of the questions from NCCLs, so it's the same kind of things we're all trying to measure, right? And so we're going to see if there's a difference between the beginning of the process and 2 years later after they've gone through an intensive family catechesis program where we're coaching us in this direction. And then we can share all that back with the parish leaders and with the diocesan leaders and such, okay? So if you're curious about this or to learn more, we're exhibiting, and you can see examples of all these resources at our table and the exhibit table. So feel free to come by or chat about it. And I'm just going to leave with some little thoughts around this coaching model, because we really think that this terminology is helpful when we think about family catechesis. And this is one of the great insights that Bill Hipsch gifted to us in this ministry, is just thinking about this term coaching. What would it mean, as a catechist or a catechetical leader to take on that identity as a coach? What are the connotations that come from that, right? It's a relationship word, right? It says you're not alone in this, but we're here to help you. But this is your responsibility. The coach isn't the one who plays the game or is on the field or is on the court, right? But they're on the sidelines, supporting you and cheering you on. We need to think about ourselves as someone who can help parents to practice and develop their skills, and then cheering and supporting them. We're partnering with parents, we're accompanying them, we're inspiring them. And I always say we have to think of ourselves like this, but with slightly better skin, maybe.
And not wet.
So we need to remember that the parents are the heroes in this story. We're not the heroes. It's not about us. So we're there to bring out what's in them, what's the best in them, to teach them, to form them, and to lift them up. Okay, that's all I've got. I'm gifting you 2.5 minutes.
Welcome, Stephen. And Stephen's non-negotiable. He's the executive director of Faith and Family Life Catholic Ministries. Okay. His non-negotiable that we're going to hold you accountable for.
Please do.
Is we must know the families we have been invited to form and foster. A process of accompaniment from these intentional relationships. So we must know the families. Bring it on, Stephen.
Thank you very much. So I am coming as the executive director of Faith and Family Life Catholic Ministries. We created the Pathways Formation Suite, so this little booklet is in your bag. But I really am coming to talk to you from using these tools for the last 5 years, putting this process in place in now multiple parishes, and seeing the fruits and the successes that came from it. And that's what I really want to share. My big passion is that I have a 5 and a 2-year-old, and I want a vibrant church for them as we continue, right? I want a church that has a network of support, that you see multiple families that are engaging with each other inside our building, but then also outside the building. And that's really where my passion comes from this. And then even our whole team, this is the desire that we have for the future of family formation. We have, so I just have, you guys can actually talk for 2 seconds. So what is the end goal for the people you are accompanying? So just one or two people, real quick. Think about it. What is the end goal for the people you are accompanying? Heaven, perfect, amen. That's a great answer, right? And does heaven happen right after First Communion? No. Does heaven happen right after they get married? No. Does it happen right after they get baptized? No, right? And so the issue, though, is we have spent a lot of time focusing on our programs, right? With those programs not being in the system of a process, right? And there's two processes we're going to talk about today. This idea of lifelong formation, and then also the catechumenal process. The church gives us this process of the catechumenate as the primary way in which we're called to form the people that we're walking with. And that catechumenal process does not end, right? The catechumenal process is supposed to be an onboarding to a lived life of faith, where we're continuously going back and revisiting the kerygma, the core of what we believe, and growing deeper and deeper. And so we've created a process that builds out using the catechumenate, puts families in an intentional community and a network of support that can continue beyond these great lessons that we do. Who here bends over backwards to form the people that they serve? I hope you're all raising your hand, because you put in lots of work. You probably do not get paid very well for that work at times. You get paid? But the reality is, right, is that we put so much time into certain areas of this process, and then there's nothing that comes from there. So we're trying to make programs that fit all those little gaps along the way. I'll talk about that in a second. But what we find, and what we was spoken about a lot yesterday very beautifully, is that this is a big shift, right? This is a big shift that we're trying to make in the church right now, and it's going to take formation. So we say that we try to form people in the ministry method of Jesus. And so this shift that we're making isn't something new. It's actually very ancient, right? We're trying to move back to a biblical understanding of how Jesus called us to walk in faith with people. And he gives us a clear story of how to do that. I'll explain that in a second. But then you look at the early church, and the early church worked as a network of support for one another. Right? And in our parishes today, I don't see that often. I see a lot of people coming to an event, coming to a liturgy, and then they're gone. But they're desiring community. They might not put that in a survey, right? Who here would automatically say, hey, put me with a group of adults and I want to share about my life? Anybody right away? No, right? Oh, perfect, we got some in the back. There's always a few. But the reality is, what I find is that the culture wants us to feel at times that we're on an island, that we're the only ones going through this stage of life, but it's not true. And how the early church expanded so quickly is that they knew that there was a supportive network of community that they could be a part of. And so we see three problems. Who here finds it difficult to find leaders to help you in your ministry? Okay, you don't even have to raise your hands. I know the answer to that one. What we've been doing really hasn't hit the need of the families that we're trying to serve at times. We've given a lot of content, and even the bishops have now addressed this, right? They've come up a whole new process of evaluation of resources and tools, because the content is great. But what does the word catechesis actually mean? Echo. Your echo apprentices up front here, right? So it means to echo. It's to echo the word. But if you haven't intimately encountered the word, what are we echoing? How are parents going to echo that to their kids? We have worked with some catechists. We've worked with some ministry leaders who have been in ministry for a while. If we don't revisit the kerygma and the word, what are we echoing? Right? And so we need to relook at that. And then finally, right, we have tons of resources that focus on K through 8. We bend over backwards for that age group. But then who's serving the before and after? When do families begin?
Marriage.
Thank you. Perfect. Sometimes people say baptism. But right, the family begins in marriage. And the church is called, it's in canon law. We're called to walk with families from that moment on. Right? But who here has a marriage enrichment program that meets consistently at their parish? Got a few. How about a post-baptismal program that supports marriages, supports families, young families, right? So we hope they come to us for marriage. We wait 7 years. We hope they come for us for baptism. We wait another 7 years. And then we hope they come for first communion. And then we complain at times, or we make these assumptions in our minds that, oh, the parents don't want to be here. But where were we when they were waking up at 2 a.m. in the morning with the screaming kids, right? Where were we when they were trying to balance work and family life and trying to figure out how to get to church and do that on Sunday? We need to know these people that we're serving. We need to meet them and then give them a process that does not stop. And it can't just fall on us. We are one person. The pastor is one person. Our ultimate goal is to create a network of support within the parish. And there's two visions of this. John Paul II called this, right? A parish is supposed to be a family of families. Pope Francis called it, we're supposed to be builder of networks. Each individual parishioner in that parish, caring about another, creates the net that will catch the rest of the people that are coming through. We've come up with a few solutions for this so far, and so this has been an ever-developing thing. I don't think it'll ever stop developing. The onion just keeps being pulled back. But for the people version, we've created two formation experiences. So the Mysterion Formation Institute is for diocesan directors and parish leaders, where we come in and we provide an experience of the catechumenate for those leaders. And so we've worked with about 8 dioceses now who have gone through that. And the goal from that is that they would then go back and at the parish level, they can run Multiply, which is a similar version, just a little truncated, that puts them through a charismatic experience, a deep dive into trying to break open the lenses of faith, and then gives them tools of how to start to build that network of support. We cannot do ministry alone. It was never intended to be done alone. One of my favorite passages in the Old Testament is when Moses is standing there in the middle of everybody, and he's listening to everybody, trying to answer, like, what is God trying to say to each person? Have you ever felt like that before? But then Moses, his father-in-law, comes in, and I'm going to paraphrase what he actually says, but he's just like, what are you doing? Like, you cannot do that. You're not only going to burn yourself out, but you're just going to annoy everybody else in the room, because you can't serve that many people. We need to bring other people onto this mission that we're on. The process, as I said, is the catechumenate. And the beautiful thing is that God does not make us try to figure that out on our own. Jesus clearly lays that out in the road to Emmaus. And I'm going to get back to that because we're going to talk heavily on that for my rest of my time. And then finally, we've created tools, as long as they're put into the process, will create this fruitfulness. It's a gradual build over time, really meeting adults and meeting families where they're at, and then slowly resourcing them, supporting them, mentoring them as they journey through life, putting them in intentional community, and then slowly having them integrate more into the lived life of the parish. The new directory says catechesis should be inspired by the catechumenal model. I think this can confuse people at times. Sometimes we think, okay, how do I infuse these different rites? And they put these families, they already have their sacraments, but how does this work? But that's not what the directory is trying to say. There's so many beautiful passages of this idea of Christ gives us the idea of how do we meet somebody, how do we meet them in the human need, connect that human need to an aspect of the gospel, continually walk with them as they deepen their understanding of this echo that's been being developed as they journey. Open their eyes to the sacramentality of how God is trying to reveal himself to them, put them in intentional community so that they can learn how to live this effectively. And so we have unpacked this process using this story. And so this is where I want to begin. Jesus comes alongside these two apostles who are distraught, walking away. We call it the road to Emmaus, but we like to call it the road away from the church, right? The road away from Jerusalem. The road to Jesus gives us the methodology of how to minister to people walking away, right? They're so distraught. Their hope has been tampered. So much so that they're blind from seeing who Christ is, right? And what does Jesus do? Does he come in right away and be like, hey, don't you remember what I said? No, right? He just comes alongside and he listens. He hears the anxiety. He hears the worry. He hears the fear. He meets the human need. There's not a single time in Scripture that Christ doesn't meet a person one-on-one, that he doesn't first meet them in the human need. Because we cannot share the gospel until we know the human need. And so our two resources that do this, and what our goal here is to try to help build trust here. The first is our visit. This is a free resource we have. In the earlier family faith formation session, we talked about this. We need to listen. We need to know the people we're serving. And so how our program begins is that we set up either yourself, the team that you establish, you meet with each individual family. If you're doing adult faith formation, you meet with each adult. If you're doing our marriage resource, you meet with each couple. And you learn their story. You understand where they are. You're that welcoming face that's building that initial trust. From there, you extend the invitation. You show them the roadmap of where we're walking, where we're going. And then you get to the next part. So we see in the scriptures, right, he says, and he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoke. Was it not necessary for the Messiah to suffer these things and enter into his glory?" I don't recommend saying how foolish you are to your people. But the reality is right, they've heard this all before. The one phrase that I really do not agree with in the church is we need to re-catechize the parents. That's not what we need to do. They've heard the message. We need to now take the message, build upon it, but then also show them how to bridge this to a practical, lived reality in their life. And that's what Jesus does. He says where he begins to share about himself, right? The cores of who they are, that they're made out of love, right? That yes, they might have fallen away, but there's redemption. And in that redemption, right, there's this greatest joy, this greatest love that we're going to achieve. That in our program is our SEEK program. This is a fully integrated process. So we have it for adults all the way to about kindergartners. And when you're doing the family program, one key element from this part all the way to our sacraments, our parents and our children are initially separated. Because the other key thing that I find is that we need to form adults as adults. A lot of our methodology focuses on a pedagogy that is a learning methodology for children, right? Adults, just like all of you come with experience. You all have things that can add to this conversation right now. So being able to put together a group of people, what we find is that this is what creates the intentional community that keeps them engaging with your parish, engaging with the church, well beyond just your initial session, right? If we're just having them come to a session, they don't have an engagement or a friendship with those other people, they can't do that. Who here has kids? Perfect. You can put your hands down. If your kids are sitting right next to you, are you going to get vulnerable? If your kids are sitting next to you, are you listening to everything that the presenter is saying? I have a 5 and a 2-year-old, and so that 2-year-old is like an alligator, and I'm just trying to keep them seated in the seat, right? And so what we find is it's really helpful to have this initial period where you're forming them, you're forming the kids, and then you come back together and you have a shared conversation, and you give them an initial practice. That SEEK program is just meant to SEEK program is just meant to happen at church initially. Then another change happens in our program, where you move into this creedal formation, where Jesus starts to explain where he is present in the scriptures. Right? What is that? That's the story of salvation history. That is unpacking the creed that we have. We call this rebuilding back the lenses of faith. How are they seeing clearly? Because if you don't have the structure, the rest of catechesis isn't going to make sense. You need to know that in a firm way, but you need to also know that in a lived way. And so they come to our church experiences, but then they're also given a tangible resource. So if you come to our exhibit, you'll see those tangible boxes that we have. But it's up until this point, they've been learning the methodology without even realizing it. They're learning how to have these conversations, how to build on these realities, because it's the same method. What they're doing at the church is now going to be what they're going to be doing in a more simplified way in their home. And so they begin to have these conversations in the home. There's a resource that the parents do for their own reflection. Then they come back for additional support at the church. And it begins the cycle that will follow the rest of this week. These two apostles now, we know, because we've read the whole story, their hearts are already starting to catch on fire, right? They don't realize they've experienced the conversion yet. They are so on fire that they're walking, and this random stranger they didn't know 7 miles ago, they say, you can just come into my house. Have you ever invited somebody in your house that you only knew for 7 miles worth of time? No. Like, they didn't have time to clean their house. They just immediately invited Jesus in, right? How often do you spend cleaning up your house for Thanksgiving if you're going to invite people over, right? They just immediately invite him in. They sit down with him. They break bread. And as they break bread, their eyes are open, right? But what happens next in the story?
They turn around.
Right before they do that, what happens in the story? What happens to Jesus in the story? He disappears. Why do you think he disappears? They no longer need Jesus out here as a physical sign, right? They understand him under sacramental signs. They see him present in the Eucharist, and now they've received the Eucharist, and he resides with it. Right? Isn't that our ultimate goal for our families? For the kids who are receiving communion? They truly believe that Jesus now resides within them. And so that becomes our sacramental resources: claims baptism, men's reconciliation, seals confirmation, and nourishes First Communion. These are much more tangible, much more experiential, trying to awaken that sacramental imagination, trying to build back ritual into the families. From there, these two apostles get so inspired that in the middle of the night, they run back to Jerusalem. No one traveled that night in Jerusalem, but they were so excited to share their witness. It's only when you're at that moment that you welcome Jesus into your life, that you're able to go, that you're running back to the church. That's when the moral life makes sense. That's when prayer is going to make sense. So that's the third part of our suite, where we're building up that third and fourth pillar of the catechism. How are we living out discipleship? How are we living out what it means to live a moral understanding of a life of Christ? How are we living in spirituality? How are we growing in that? This is just a quick summary of what the Pathway Suite is trying to do, right? It's a multiple resources. We're trying to be intentional, immersive, interactive. We're trying to create this holistic apprenticeship. One of the key elements of this is that grace builds on nature, and we're dealing with a population that's struggling with human skills. We do not have the human skills that are necessary for some of these things to make sense. And so we have, we are really into creating small faith communities, because that's what keeps the connection going beyond just the session. That we want them to continue that relationship outside of the parish. It's lifelong, it's integral. There's a vertical operation of it, so it's for adults all the way to kids. It's leader and parent supported, and then we're trying to move the church to be family centric and church supported rather than church centric and family supported. We've created a whole leadership development program in this model that builds off of this, like I said. We want to pull parents together and bond them and just continue to walk with them on this journey. This is a conversation that takes multiple conversations to have. It's a big switch. We're changing the process, the tool, the methodology, and you're going to need a team to do that. The accompaniment we ask you guys to do as a parish, we also are going to put into you to help you make it work. To help, if you're a diocesan director, to help your parishes make it work. We also have tools at the diocesan level to work to help form the leaders that are there. So if we can help in any way, please let me know. Please sign that or come see us at the table. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Okay, Kathie is the pastoral associate at St. Anthony on the Lake in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I always want to say she's from Madison, which is her non-negotiable, which is intriguing because you have one chunk and then the chunk gets bigger and then you get to the final presenter and it gets even bigger. When you can't capture 30 years in less words, right? Kathie really takes a strong stance that family catechesis involves the home and the parish partnership. The home because it is the domestic church with that famous line of parents, you're the primary catechist, but also the parish because we need a wider community for our lifelong faith formation. And it immerses us in an intergenerational community. That's who we are. That's who we're called to be as Eucharistic people. Welcome, Kathie Amiedei.
I don't think anyone wants the spot right after lunch, but right after lunch after two other people. So thanks for staying awake for me. I appreciate it. So, as Mary had said, I was wonderful that I started when I was 10. So that's 30 years. It flies by. If any of you have been in ministry that long, it's wonderful, really. It's a grace. I am going to talk to you today about, I know what I wanted to say first. I have 3 sons and 1 daughter. And I always tell people, when you have a son that gets married and has their own family, I can tell you the secret of getting along with your daughter-in-law. And that is, there's one sentence that you say to her, and that's, how can I help you? I don't give my daughter-in-law any opinions. My daughter-in-laws, I don't give them any advice. I don't tell them what to do. However, I have a daughter. I tell her everything. I tell her, give her all kinds of advice. I tell her when things and so when John asked me to give a talk about 10 things I've learned in 30 years, I thought, I think I'll give the mom talk. I think I'm going to say everything that I wouldn't ordinarily say. When I'm working with parishes, I'll really try to see where people are. And there's a variety of ways to bring people into, in terms of, as a catechetical leader, to engage parents and families. But I'm going to just focus on one thing of, kind of really what have I learned? And when I thought about this, I thought, in some of the studies, and that, that I'm sure you've read and I have read, people have looked at the whole ocean. They've looked at, all the research and done lots of surveys, and I've been a part of those. But today I wanted to talk about like the one drop of water. I feel like I've spent 30 years really studying one drop of water. As a matter of fact, when I finished my dissertation, one of Bishop Scalva, rest his soul, wrote me a note. He said, Kathie, you know more about one thing than anyone else in the world. And I think it was, I could just see him, if those of you know him, he'd be smiling when he said that. It was like, seriously, you spent 4 years studying this one thing. And that's really what I have spent 20 years studying, this one thing. And it came to me, and I'll tell you how I got there, but when I think about this, what I realized was I actually came from a background in Catholic education. I taught in the Catholic schools for 10 years, and I knew the church documents about families and children and catechesis. But then I got to understand some of the research. And when we look at church teaching is normative. It tells us who we could or should be. It gives us that aspiration to be. But research tells us who we are. And I came to realize that who doesn't love a good Venn diagram, right? If you put it in a Venn diagram, it's so clear. And I thought, in the Venn diagram, I started to like literally vision this. It's like, I think if we look at this, what's in the center, I think that's our opportunity. I'll tell you how I got here. In 1991, I just finished my master's degree, and I wanted to work in a parish, and this wonderful parish asked me to work with them, and I was delighted about it. There was one little problem. They were piloting this family model, and it was a pilot model for the Archdiocese of Milwaukee. It was lectionary-based family catechesis. In 1991, not a lot of people had heard about that in parish level. And I, coming from my newly minted master's in theology and my 10 years of Catholic school experience, thought, this is really weird. And I know you have to do these things for the Archdiocese, but I think I am so confident that 1 year I can tell Father why this is a bad idea, and I can go on to the kind of religious education that I thought we should be doing. Because I always had in my mind that the privileged children were the ones who went to Catholic school, right? And that we just give the leftovers to the children that weren't in the Catholic schools. So I really wanted to build that up so that they weren't the children that had to go to college and didn't really know who they were. So that was very important to me. But then, as I got into it during that year, I began to see that, oh my goodness, I honestly was incredibly humbled. Because it was like I had no idea what had happened at the end of that year. I saw parents talking with their children. I saw dads. I'd never seen many dads interacting with their children. I saw families talking about faith. I saw excitement. I saw children wanting to come to this. And I began to see, oh my gosh, this is much more like my family. And I started thinking about my Italian family and how we always gathered. And it was like, oh, this is what this is supposed to look like more. This needs to be something warm and welcoming. And we need to recognize that everybody has a place at the table. It really has to be inclusive, even those little noisy kids and those grumpy older uncles, we all, say dumb jokes. They all have to be at the table. And I realized that this didn't need to be perfect, but it did need preparation and organization. But when everybody got there, you had to be flexible. So my Nana had to make, her had to make the meal and everything, and there was a lot of preparation, there was organization. But when everybody came, it was just like, let it go. And I realized that what I had learned, what I saw the similarity with family catechesis and my family, was that food and conversation drew people together. And that wasn't part of my school model in my head. And I realized that ritual creates a sense of belonging. I started thinking about I just envisioned my Nana with her pot of Italian sauce, tomato sauce, but nobody could, it wasn't okay to eat until my Uncle Joe came and took a piece of Italian bread and dipped it in and said, Mama, it's good. It's like then we could all eat it. And you would walk in and my papa, my grandfather would be at the end of the table, and he would greet you with his whiskery beard, that you just was all rough and scarlet. And he would say something in Italian to you that you didn't know what it was, but you knew you were loved. So those are the rituals, and I thought this is all part of this. So in trying to talk about in 10, 20 minutes on 10 things, I don't know if I'll get to that. I again try to be organized. So I try to say, if we a practice to consider in cultivating faithful and successful family catechesis, it will be more likely to be effective if. That's kind of my correlational research on this. When families gathering, when gathering for parish family catechesis, think how we can be more like a big family than a school. And that doesn't mean we're not learning, right? I was a teacher. I'm big on learning. I am so big on learning that I would stand here and say the Baltimore Catechism had a value that we missed today. When I was 7 years old, I knew why God made me. God made me to know Him, to love Him, to serve Him in this life, to be happy with Him in the next. That is a great starting point that some people never get to. So I don't think learning is not a part of this. I think it's definitely a part of it. So what I learned about families and faith, as I kind of have to continue to keep trying to learn about this, is that there's something wired in us as human beings to love our children. And if we can harness that power in a family, the catechesis really kind of flows from there. It's harnessing that power that's already there, intrinsic in the relationship between parents and children, grandparents and children. Just sort of a little drop of water. I've helped many parishes to start a family program, and I have started family programs in 3 parishes. But one parish I've been really able to walk through since 1995. So we started out with 20 families in a gym, and the families sat on bleachers. That's all we had. The present day, there's over 300 families in this. And what's interesting about this is the parish has actually built spaces in their building programs to accommodate not just the Catholic school, but to accommodate this. And I think that speaks a lot, because so often, and again, I love Catholic education, but the truth is 68% of Catholic parents, 68% do not have their children in religious education or a Catholic school. So about probably 80 to 90% of those are in faith formation. Probably about 10% are in action Catholic. So we're only seeing 32% of kids, and a lot of them are not in Catholic schools. And so when we look at our building, it's like, right, your money, your resources, where you spend your resources tells you, right, your values are right. And so I think that's an important thing. And just, of course, we look at the General Directory for Catechesis, and everything that we're doing, we always want to be Christ-centered, a charismatic catechesis. We always are remembering that we have to evangelize before we catechize. We all agree, I think, that it depends on parents, that they're at the center, and that it's lifelong. It's all ages and stages. And so my second little mantra here of this will be more likely to happen if conversion precedes catechesis. So we're always thinking about that continually, and it's not a once and done thing. It's something that we keep being, that metanoia that continues throughout our life, and that parents are indeed the ones primarily responsible for their children's faith. We believe that, but we also believe that faith is lifelong, that it doesn't end in grade school or end with confirmation. So, it's after lunch. Will you play a little game with me? Just take a second. Let's play a game of thumbs up or thumbs down, okay? Thumbs up or thumbs down. So, okay. Remember, I come from Wisconsin. Plan your mandatory sacramental prep program on our family Bible study gathering at church during a Packer game. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Okay.
During a Packers game?
That's true.
In Wisconsin.
That doesn't work as well here, does it? Okay. Invite them to a parent event and give them an intellectual lecture on Christology, liturgical norms, canon law, and the theology of eschatology. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Assign each parent to bring 10 dozen gluten-free, dairy-free, peanut-free snacks for your faith formation class or retreat, and tell them to leave them by the door. Stop sending registration forms between 3rd and 10th grade. Families need a break between sacraments. And if all else fails, make them feel guilty. Okay, obviously these are not great ideas. So our third thought to make family catechesis more likely to happen is provide times that are convenient for them. Provide adult formation that's relevant to being a parent, that's key, and passing on the faith to their children. So formation that if parents aren't coming, they're signing up for your Bible study, they're coming because they love their children. And that's what we have to keep remembering when we're gathering parents. Give them meaningful involvement and responsibilities, like start building their leadership. Frame all catechesis as a lifelong plan. This is not for a certain age group, and it really does begin at birth. It's not, we can't be waiting till they're 7. And do all you can to make families feel loved. So when I think of, because I'm thinking from a parish perspective, we have to, what does the parish do? What's the value of it? It really helps to make catechesis systematic, comprehensive, and the parish really has a great opportunity in that Venn diagram to equip parents for their role of bringing the faith to life through everyday experiences. I also think it isn't easy to be so it's not easy to be a parish today, but it's not easy to be a parent today either. It's a challenging time to pass on your faith in our culture. It really is counterculture. And I love this. Before I had kids, I had 3 parents with theories. Now I have 3 kids and no theories. So from my dissertation research, when I studied parents, some of these things that they said, that some of their parents' self-assessment is the first heralds of the gospel and their child's primary teacher of faith. These are some of their quotes. A mom said, look, catechists have the teacher's edition of the book. And a dad said, catechists are trained, we're not. So it's interesting, parents affirm the role of catechists, and they trust catechists, who they probably don't know, doing what they're doing for their children, but they don't always trust themselves. And I was thinking about this, and I kind of summed it up. It's not a matter of will. It's not that they don't want to. It's a matter of skill. It's a matter that they don't have what they need to pass on the faith. They would if they could. What I have found is parents will become confident by doing. So if we give parents opportunities to talk about faith experiences, experiences and practices of faith with their children, they begin to grow more confident. And so my 4th little suggestion we have to think about our narrative with parents. We have to listen to parents first, as has been said over and over again. Meet them where they are. And we want to share power with families. Treat them as true partners, not sort of like we got to throw some bones to them. We got to say, no, we're in this together. And speak from heart to heart when we talk to parents. And then we have to equip parents with that knowledge and skills for effective parenting and challenge growth in them to live up to their potential. As I've worked with families and been a mom and a grandma and a sister and a daughter, I've come to believe these things, 4 things. I believe that families are created to teach us about who God is and to teach us about God and to show us who God is. I think if we really take that into our hearts, we do things differently. I also believe families are complicated. Does anyone come from a complicated family? I do. I mean, families have been complicated since Cain and Abel, haven't they? Well, thank you. They're also full of grace, and they're the foundation that we build our life on, or what we spend our life healing from. So they're very important, right? I only have 5 minutes. I want to talk to you about the model. And this is my little drop of water that I've been studying. I believe that we need to think of these things when we're talking about family catechetical models. Is a model sustainable? Is it replicable? Does it depend on a charismatic leader? Because there aren't always are charismatics, or do they develop leaders? Is it too complicated for a parish with limited resources to do? So while no one model is perfect, this transform model that I'm going to share with you is simple, it's replicable, it's sustainable, it uses the gifts of the parish and parents, it builds on catechetical tradition of our religious education, and it's developed from evidence-based research, and it's not really expensive. And so when we think about this, I'm going to just take my last few minutes to explain this a little bit. It's not home versus parish, it's home and parish. And that we develop a sense of belonging, which is one of the most salient factors intertwined with faith, by having regular, warm interactions with the faith community, how important that is. And we recognize the multi-generational experience in relationships with the family community, how important they are, as well as with our immediate family. And so I think about family catechesis, especially if you're talking to someone who doesn't think they want to do this, talk to them about, it's more like changing lanes. And when we're changing lanes, we're not changing the content. We teach the same things, but how we teach it is both age-specific and intergenerational. And we teach it because the church's teachings and research, what we were talking about, the Venn diagram. When you look at a traditional model or a faith formation model, they both use systematic, comprehensive curriculum. One is taught by just volunteer catechists, another by catechists and parents. One is just for children, another is lifelong. And it takes place both in the parish and the home. It's not content focused, it's charisma focused. And in a model like this, parents are teachers and parents are learners. So let me just show you a little about this. I worked with some communications people and some people that have been doing this family model, and I said, how can I find images and words to help people understand this? Because most people say, I know what a school looks like, I know what a church looks like, I don't know what this looks like. And so we've calling this transform, because we believe it transforms the parish, it transforms the family. Just think of these three components: a social community building time, age level faith formation for children and adolescents, but also adults, and some kind of family activity in the session. And we call these gather, grow, guide. So these are my 3 points: gather, grow, guide. I want to give you a chance to see it. Gathering is very important, that social community building time. Remember I talked about conversations and food, it bringing people together. It doesn't matter if you have a box of cookies and coffee and juice and whatever, or donuts, or a whole meal, but somehow you have to have a time when there is a networking of families. That is one of the successes of Catholic education, is families know each other. Families will never know each other if the parents are in the parking lot and the children are in the building. So we need that importance of fellowship. It's religious socialization. I would talk more about each of these, but I at least want to get all of them in. So gather is important. It's not just about hospitality, it's about how catechesis will be successful, and it's an important part of it. Second is grow, which is age-specific, systematic, comprehensive learning for children and youth. I will see these children are using textbooks. I am not against textbooks. I think textbooks are a tool. And one of the ways that we work in this is that the children do a chapter with their catechist when they come for family catechesis, and then we send one home with them, then the parents do at home. Then they do one at parish and one at home. And so we were getting the same amount of curriculum in, but now we're partnering with parents. We're saying, you can do this as much as we can. So you use familiar religious education and at all different ages. So I can talk more about that if I had more than 20 minutes, but I don't. But this model also expands to that age specific, to say it's as important for the adults to be in some kind of adult formation, which honors the way adults learn. They learn by talking to each other. They don't learn by being lectured to. This you'll probably remember 5%, if I'm lucky, of what I said. But if we were talking to each other, you would remember a lot more. So that's a lot of what we're doing with families. sometimes when we're with families, I think with parents, we think we have to teach them something. I think we have to form and inform them. So this, I have to go. I just want to tell you the last part because they're gonna kick me off here.
5 seconds, 5
thank you.
seconds.
Guy is the family activity, and these are the, you're gonna use all the things that we would always be teaching, the pillars of the catechism, the church pillar of scripture, but we do them as active learning activities with families. Here they're creating a papal flag because they've learned all about the Pope. Here they are talking to each other, having prayer services. These are the things we want to think about when we gather intergenerationally with families. Is it active? Does it teach something? Is prayer involved? Do families have discussions with each other? And is it fun, joyful, and engaging? And if another 20 minutes, I would tell you how to do that.
Wow.